provided them with an itemized list of the accounts, the line items in their budget that could be reduced because they were so inflated it was a joke. And they accepted that zero increase in the appropriation, and they followed the list that we gave them for how to reduce their budget without losing out on a paper clip. So don't lecture me that I did a lousy job, that Mrs. Pharisee did a lousy job, and stop the inferences. If anybody's responsible for the current mess that we're in now, it's the current leadership. And I'll go into that right now. We have $368,000 in lost state aid to the schools. And we're making believe, it sounds to me like it's being implied that the state just cut state aid funding. Our state aid funding, I believe, is being reduced because our student population is going down the toilet. And the formula for the aid reimbursement to the communities has a fixed dollar amount per student. And then other variable amounts are added onto that. So every time you lose a kid, you're going to lose the base, which is a nice little hefty, Ford. I think if my memory is correct, it might be like 8,000 and change or more than that. Okay, and then the additional funds that you can get in state aid are based on your demographics of the population. How many free and reduced lunch kids do you have? You get more money for the more kids. How many IEP kids? You get more money for that. So every time you lose a kid, that's why the state aid is being reduced. It has nothing to do with the change in the formula from the state. It has to do with we're losing kids, okay? We are the last project. I'm tired of reading in the paper that our student population isn't declining. That's a joke. The last NESDIC projection that was done this December shows that we're going to be down to projecting we'll be down to 1,527 students in 10 more years. The high school will have 420 students in it. Okay? They projected this year we'd have 652. We actually have 1,644 as of May 1st. The 10-year projection that they did 10 years ago, bringing us right up to this year, was right on the money. Okay? But people like to interpret numbers and make up numbers that suit their case. So when the school building committee met to determine, after we spent $100,000 on a consultant to do an analysis of the needs of the school department, all the improvements to the buildings that needed to be done, and an idea of how to reconfigure the space, I sat at that school building committee meeting when the consultant gave 6 pages of a report that should have been about 150. It was just a handful of pages, and he asked that committee to make a selection based on those 6 pages. Eliminate from our menu of 8 choices what you'd like to do, bring it down to 4, okay? John Raymond was on the school committee at the time. He's an accountant. He was on the school committee at the time. He was on that building committee. He was the only person at that meeting who had the brains to say, how can we make a selection of what options to choose when there's no cost estimates in front of us? We don't know what any of these things are going to cost. But yet they made a choice. So we're now spending money to build a 4-classroom addition, the Cadillac. It's a little more than just 4 classrooms. We did a few other things while over there, and another couple of million out of the school's fund balance to renovate the science labs at the high school, 6 of them. When I was in that building, we had 5 science labs, and it was twice the number of students that we have now. So when we get down to 400 students, 420 students, in another 10 years, we'll have 6 science labs. I scheduled kids for a living. Every one of those science classes is probably empty 2 periods a day. And in the school that I scheduled the students in, we had much greater population than this high school has, and we didn't have 5 science labs. So, while you preach to me about the past, I'm watching what's happening now and how people have contributed to the mess. If you think this is a fiscal mess now, hold your hat, pal, because we're coming into the real tsunami in a couple more years when the student enrollment drops by another 100. Middletown and Newport right now, for the second time, are investigating the possibility of building a regional high school. Not because the buildings they have need help, but because they understand that when you have a high school with less than 500 students in it, you can't run it efficiently, and you can't deliver the programs that kids need. So, we'll make these decisions, and the administrator was sitting right at that meeting. He had a vote when they made that choice, and he saw no problem with making a choice and narrowing the list down without knowing what any of those projects were going to cost. So I take offense to that as a taxpayer. I don't think he watched my back at that meeting. And he didn't open his mouth to support Mr. Raymond when he said, gee, should we have some numbers? Can we wait until we have numbers before we, wipe out the possibilities? So he voted for one idea of reconfiguration because he knew it was going to cost nothing. And he said, I know that's the only one we can for sure support because we don't have budget numbers for anything else. So let me catch a breath and Coke. So, Paul, that $361,000 bond payment that's now in the budget this year for the addition to the elementary school, that was supposed to be floated several years ago. And when that was supposed to be floated, you, sir, sat on the school superintendent's school building advisory committee, and that committee is charged by state law with overseeing all renovations to the building and being a consultant on the building. The superintendent sabotaged that application to RIDE by adding in a 250-space parking lot at NECS because we were adding 4 third-grade classrooms, which obviously translates into the need for 250 parking lots because I guess the kids in the 3rd grade were all going to be driving to school. And that application went in with a statement saying that the school building committee had approved that application and was aware of the contents of that application. That application didn't get denied because the construction costs were going to be greater. The letter from that individual indicated that the budget, which was the bond amount, doesn't meet the scope of work and the price for what you're anticipating because the architect had added in the nice things that the superintendent had added in without anybody's knowledge. The town council, the school committee, nobody. I went before the town council and asked that architect be sued by the town because I knew I was going to be paying this bond payment down the road. And if it had gone into the books when you think it shouldn't have, I wouldn't be paying it right now. But I am now. So you've created your own mess, okay? So I don't have a lot of empathy for any of it. I'm sick of hearing it, and every time I hear a number or a statement that's an out and out blatant untruth, I'm going to speak up very loudly. I'm tired of it. So between the two items, the $368,000 in lost aid for the school and the $361,000 bond payment, you're up to $700,000. I don't even think the National Grid thing is that big of a deal at this point. These are the problems that are going to continue to eat at us from now on, okay? So let's get on to where we're taxing. The comment was made that, the projected rates went directly to the re-eval numbers. Well, I understand what maybe he's trying to say there, but I'd like to point out that I don't have the paper in front of me, but I believe he lowered the residential tax rate by 5.5% and the commercial tax rate by 5.5%. However, the residential properties appreciated by 15% and the commercial only by 8 and change in versus percentage. Why would you give the same amount of a decrease to the category whose assets didn't increase less than the residential? When you do a re-eval and when you do the tax rate, if at the beginning I was paying $1 and he was paying 50 cents because he's the tangible, you establish the rates so that at the end I'm still going to pay $1 and he's going to pay 50 cents. You don't give him the same break that you gave me when I was paying, when my property went up. You lull people into thinking that they have nothing to fear from reevaluation because in the end the rate's going to change. Well, that's happened already this year for sure. There are some people who are going to be seeing well over 20% increases in their tax bills. They should have panicked when they saw their reevaluation. Instead, they thought, well, everybody says it's going to be okay. Sadly, it isn't. And when those tax bills go out, because not a lot of people realize what their bills are going up by, even at the projected rates, you're going to have some unhappy campers in this town. Regarding the decision to adjust the commercial rate and the tangible rate, I do realize they piggyback by ratio. But you also have the option, because North Smithfield is unique, you had enabling legislation for the tax structure passed years ago. Some communities are more limited in what they can and can't do. North Smithfield has more flexibility. There is no requirement that you drop the commercial rate by a penny. You can keep it what it is. It's still in the 150% ratio to the residential, even if you drop the residential. If you keep the commercial where it is, you can drop the residential rate by 50 cents. That's going to mean a couple of bucks for a couple of people. Okay? And I'm being cynical when I just say a couple of bucks for a couple of people. I hope that's clear. So I don't think it was done in perfect line with the way that the re-evals came in. Not when one category goes up in value by 15%, the other one goes up only 8%, but they both get the same percentage cut in their tax rate. No, that doesn't mesh with me. Okay. So we look at the commercial tax rate. There are 20 communities in this state who have a higher commercial tax rate than we do. Out of the 39 districts, 20 of them have a higher rate than we do. So I don't have a lot of empathy or sympathy for the commercial taxpayer, because quite honestly, he also gets the benefit, many of them do, of the decrease in the tangible tax rate, because a lot of them have the commercial rate and the tangible rate to pay. So with those numbers that are on the website, they get a real bonanza of a kicker. The residential homeowners, of course, get the end of the stick. I'm not complaining, by the way, for myself tonight, because I did well in the re-eval. I came out of relatively unscathed compared to a lot of other people. But I did see, and I reviewed a lot of the assessments online, and there are a lot of inequities out there. I don't care what anybody says. I have a property that's directly across the street from Mary's Committees. My tax bill is going up by $80. Ask her how much hers is going up by. Okay? The house I own, the building I own on Great Road is going up by $80. My home is going up by $440. How can one appreciate so much more than the other? There's issues with those assessments. I'm sorry. The commercial properties use more town services. In the 45 years that I've been a homeowner, I've called the police department once when my house was vandalized by kids in the middle of the night. How many times does a commercial property have to I'm sick, and when I was on the budget committee, I got sick and tired of hearing how we had to add police officers because they were arresting so many people at Darling Village, and Walmart was, charging them with grand theft auto every other day, and the fights in the parking lot. So it taps the resources. The commercial properties also have the large trucks that run through town and destroy the roads, which we don't put any money into rebuilding. Now this year we're adding $450,000. When the budget committee recommended it several years ago, led by Mrs. Alves, it was opposed. That increase was opposed by the town administrator, and the town council favored the opinion of the administrator rather than Mrs. Alves and her committee, the 5 people who worked on it. So they all resigned en masse. I don't blame them at all. The fire trucks, the fire department is taxed by the commercial property. They have to do inspections. They have to get false alarms when the alarm systems go off at night. They're getting a big kick here. And the commercial properties also did very, very well in the federal tax restructuring plan. They benefited wonderfully. If I read one more article where Amazon paid 0 in federal taxes, I'm going to pick up a gun. Okay? That's just a joke, by the way, so don't call the police to turn me in. And as was said earlier, you pointed out, the tangibles depreciate each year. They do go down. So automatically, because the tangibles depreciate, the tangible taxpayer's bill goes down. That doesn't happen with my house or anybody else's house in this room. We don't get every year to depreciate our property. We have to wait for a re-eval. And unfortunately, and the tangibles weren't impacted by the re-evals at all. And I'll go on to a new little item with the tangibles to point out. I went into the tax assessor's office a couple of weeks ago because I saw in the paper where one tangible taxpayer had an extraordinarily large bill, and I was kind of surprised. So I went in to ask what the other businesses in this town were paying for that same type of service. Not as large as that establishment, but the same. That business was paying about a fraction of what I pay on my CR-V Honda. Okay? It was peanuts. It was a couple of $100. And it would be obvious to anybody that the equipment that you see on the roads is worth much, much, much more than my CR-V. She acknowledged that she had just seen that herself earlier in the morning before I came in and was going to address it. But that brings me to a recommendation that we made on the Budget Committee several years ago, and I'm sure you're going to remember this, Paul, because you were party to the conversation. I think we recommended in one of our conversations that we hire an external auditor to review the tangible asset evaluations in this town. Because the tangible form just comes into the tax assessor's office, people put down what they paid for the thing, and there's not a lot of follow-through on that. So I think that there's a lot of people who might be getting away with murder already on the tangible taxpayer rate. So let's start checking on them, and let's hire an auditor. And Paul, at the time, your neighbor, who lived about 5 houses away, had a conversation with me, and I shared that conversation with you, and then you spoke to him about it, and we both thought it was a great idea, but there was never any follow-through. So, 10 years later, here I am, going to the tax assessor's office, and finding out that a business that owns bazillions more in equipment is paying less on his tangible property than I'm paying on a Honda CR-V 2016. Something's wrong with the picture. So why don't we actually start auditing the tangibles and put a little money into paying for an auditor to review them. And maybe we'll make up that lost revenue that we need by taxing people what they should be taxed. We haven't even gotten to the part about what the sewer and water bills are going to go up by. So the homeowners are going to get hit with their real estate assessments and the new adjustment in the rates, and their water and sewer rates are going to go up again. The Slatersville Water Authority, what do they have? The second highest or highest in the state for a water rate. Okay, and I don't even know if that includes the new bond payments that are going to be on the books when the line is extended. Regardless, I'm going to be paying $527 a unit for the building I own on Great Road that has 5 people living in it. But I'm going to be paying $527 times 5 because there's 5 apartments, even there's only 5 people living, 1 person living in each apartment. So it's going to cost me over $2,600 for those 5 people to flush their toilets during the year. And those sewer rates have been going up by nice numbers every year, and nobody seems to be panicking over that. So let's Mary will be paying a higher sewer rate plus her ridiculous assessment, while the neighbor across the street, his taxes only went up $80, but it was a good number. In the past couple of years, you've taxed us to put money in the bank. In 2018, you taxed us, you added $535,000 to the budget so that you could beef up the town's fund balance. Okay, that's basically banking the money. We had a AA rating at the time. I argued against you doing that. You did it anyway. So the increase that we paid in that tax bill that year, about 50% of it was attributed to the fact that you wanted to put more money in the piggy bank of the town. And the piggy bank of the town has now over $5 million of unrestricted revenue. Not to mention the other millions in the other categories that you could have reclassified had you wanted to. In 2019, you did the same thing, but only with $250,000. So, we've already been punished enough for paying for things that we're not getting new services on. And when you adjust the rates the way you do, it's not like we're getting a lot more for the money for our tax increase this year. It's just that you got burnt by the reevaluation and that they benefited from their tax reductions in the other 2 categories. So we're going to pick up the slack for what we're losing in those categories if you alter those rates. And the homeowner will get hit twice. And I'd like to also thank you because I did ask for information from the tax assessor on May 31st. I sent you an email this morning saying I never got the information. I had hoped to have it before this evening. And it did, of course, have to do with the tangible accounts in the state. I asked for the 10 highest tangible taxpayers in the town. And I'll just say that in the past, I've walked into the tax assessor's office and I'm a different tax assessor, and I'm not blaming her, she might be under orders, I don't know. But it was always a matter of, oh sure, I can print that for you, and it's done electronically by a report that's generated. So, you know, if you filter it right or you know how to do it, or maybe the other tax assessors were using their own particular spreadsheet, but I did call a couple of districts today and said, how long would it take me if I asked you for this type of report? And it wasn't a long time. So I question why I wasn't given that information, but I kind of suspect I know the answer. So as we move on to the budget, I'd like to ask, I guess I'll start by asking the Budget Committee some questions. As I said, when I chaired the Budget Committee, we were told that we needed to provide the school department with a list of suggested line item reductions. That was told to us by Walter Edge from, I think it was Bacon and Edge. And so we did do it. And I didn't see any suggested cuts by line item in this budget. And it took a tremendous amount of work on our part to come up with it, but we did. So I don't see any here. Was that done? Did you guys give a recommended list of reductions in the school department budget?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe...
You think we had to?
Yes, I think you had to.
Why?
No, it was a recommendation of the previous...
We cut the budget.
Yeah.
Right? And people know the budget best, us standing behind it.
Yeah.
And it would be up to them to look at each line item.
Well, you know, that's where we disagree, because when we looked at each line item after we built the spreadsheets that we did, we were able to identify those line items that had too much padding.
Did they agree with you?
Yes, they did.
They did?
They reduced all the line items by the amount we
Well, you
suggested.
should join the budget committee.
Yeah. No, I would never, after what was happened to the previous budget committee.
Well, you're kind of doing it now.
Mrs. Alice. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. So let's talk about it then. And this